If you've ever struggled to understand or explain the different types of construction contracts, then this video is for you. I get asked almost daily about cost-plus contracts and if I should use them as a residential contractor. This is because for a long time the standard has been fixed-cost contracts. But cost-plus is gaining a lot of momentum in the industry. So today we're breaking down the big three when it comes to construction contracts and 3 variations on cost-plus contracts. We'll unpack what they are, the different types, and how they compare to fixed cost and time and material contracts. This is a must-know if you're in residential construction, remodeling, or custom home building. So stick around, this is going to save you a ton of headaches. Now, there are a lot of people out there that think that cost-plus contracts are for lazy contractors who don't want to stick to timelines or budgets, or that they just don't know how to estimate properly. When in fact, nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, not long ago, Michael Stone, the legendary author of Markup and Profit for Contractors, emailed me to say that if I thought that cost-plus contracts were so good, why has the state of California made them illegal? Michael is infamous for calling cost-plus contractors lazy, as he just doesn't believe in the model. But as someone who had a 21-year construction career, with the first 11 being fixed cost and the last 10 being cost plus, I figured I'd weigh in my opinion. So this isn't a video with business advice based on theory. It's based on my actual experience scaling both fixed cost and cost plus construction businesses. Let's dig in. In the NBA, teams often build the big three. It's when they load their starting lineup with 3 bona fide superstars. I think of LeBron, Wade, and Bosh on the Miami Heat, or Durant, Kyrie, and Harden on the Brooklyn Nets. They do this to have a massive impact on their teams and win championships. In residential construction, the big three refers to the different types of construction contracts, and choosing the right one has the biggest impact on how you win as a builder. The big three are cost plus, fixed cost, and time and material. So what is a cost plus contract? In a cost plus contract, homeowners reimburse the contractor for the cost of goods, labor, materials, and trades, plus a markup on top. This markup contributes to your overhead and net profit of your company. Think of it like this: if your cost plus 15%, then everything I buy for $1, I sell back for $1.15. From a client's perspective, this model offers a lot of transparency and allows them to see exactly where every single dollar is going in their construction project. And for you, it protects your gross profit so you can stop eating costs. Sounds great, right? But before we go any further, I need to call out a trap that I see a lot of remodelers and custom home builders fall into when it comes to cost plus. You see, they call their plus part a management fee. And this is just plain wrong, and it's why one of the variations of a cost plus contract is an absolute no-no. More on that in a second. In reality, project management and site supervision are line items that are in your budget and are subject to the same markup that all other labor is subject to. To ensure this happens, it's imperative that you stop calling your markup a project management fee on your project estimates. And make sure to strike this language from your sales pitch as well. Otherwise, you're going to confuse your clients and they're going to push back on your pricing. And in the words of Donald Miller, when you confuse, you lose. It's also critical that you charge management and supervision in every change order that you build, because when the project timeline increases, so does the management and supervision time. Before we dive deeper into the 3 variations on cost plus contracts, let's talk about how they differ between fixed cost and time and material. Now, a common belief is that cost plus and time and material contracts are the same thing, when in fact, they're not. A time and materials contract is exactly that. It's a contract that reimburses the contractor for time spent and materials consumed on a project, but doesn't include a markup. So, in a time material contract, you want to ensure that you add your overhead and net profit recovery into the labor rates that you're charging. Because it's not common to mark up your materials because it's transparent and visible for the client and not the spirit of a time and materials contract. What this means is that you typically profit a lot less than a true cost plus or even a fixed cost contract. Now, with fixed cost contracts, you set one price for the entire scope of the work. This price will include your direct costs and your markup. In a fixed cost contract, the homeowner sacrifices transparency on costs to know that they won't exceed the agreed upon price. And you as the builder have the ability to add a much higher markup because it's hidden, as well as buffers inside of each category to cover yourself. And that's because in a fixed cost contract, you don't disclose line item pricing. In contrast, cost plus contracts work differently. They treat the construction project as an open book between you and your client. This means clients see all costs line by line, including the markup that you put on top. And because it's visible to a client, you traditionally charge a lower markup in a cost plus contract. But the trade-off is that there's lower risk because your cost of goods like labor, materials, and trades are always paid for. When selling these to clients, I always used to say to them that allows us to be both your builder and your consultant in one. It's an ideal pricing model for homeowners and contractors that want to get started on a project, even if all estimated costs aren't known, and design plans and finishes aren't fully finished yet. But going into a project without knowing the total cost of it can bring frustration to a client who wants to know the total cost of their job. And this uncertainty can cause friction downstream in the process as the costs pile up. That's why, for a very long time, the standard in construction has been fixed cost contracts. But fixed cost contracts have their own set of challenges. Because if it isn't your first rodeo, you know that the starting price of a project and the end price of a project are never the same. Because work won't go as planned, it'll take longer, and there are just things that you don't know yet. This includes things like FF&E, otherwise known as finishes, furnishings, and equipment, which tend to be established later on in construction. These are things like plumbing fixtures, tiles, cabinetry, countertops, and so on. Typically, you'll include allowances in the estimating phase. But as a fixed cost builder, it can be challenging to set allowances because it usually limits what a client can select. And this can lead to uncomfortable conversations later on in the project when they select more expensive finishes. This is why if you're fixed cost, I strongly encourage you to use cash allowances like we do in cost plus building. This allows you to openly discuss the cost with your clients, knowing that you've already built your overhead and profit recovery into the initial margin in your proposal. Otherwise, clients are going to go ahead and surf the web and try to reverse engineer your pricing. I'll do another whole video on allowances and managing them in both billing models, so make sure to subscribe. Okay, now that we've compared cost plus to fixed costs and time and materials, let's talk about the 3 variations on cost plus. That's because cost plus contracts are not one size fits all, but it's imperative that you understand the differences and how it affects your bottom line. True cost plus, or percentage of cost, charges the cost of goods plus a markup on top. When I was in business, we charged 15% on cost plus contracts. I would tell clients that for every dollar we spend on your innovation, we charge you $1.15. And it is that simple. True cost plus contracts ensure your profitability by adding a markup to every single cost of goods that you experience in the project. This means that if the project duration increases or the scope of work changes, you're always compensated for the cost of goods plus additional management and supervision time, plus the markup on top. Now remember when I said we'll talk about an absolute no-no version? That's what's called a cost plus fixed fee option, and it can literally bankrupt your company. Here's why. These contracts add a predetermined flat fee to the project costs and are typically called a management fee. And if you remember, this is one of the big traps that cost plus remodelers and custom home builders find themselves in. And the big problem with this is that the management fee is usually based on the initial timeline, but things rarely go to plan. The end result is, when the project timeline extends, you tend to not make any more fee. It gets diluted and essentially you're working for free. Now you might be thinking, I'll still at least be billing for site supervision and project management time. And while that might be true, it's important to recognize that we don't tend to make too much per hour on our top skilled people like project managers and supervisors. And you can't rely on this as a profit stream. You can also expect that your clients are going to start barking about the ongoing hours that you're billing them as the project timeline continues to drag on. They will question why the initial fee was capped, but that you're continuing to bill them for additional management hours. Remember folks, no matter how well you explain your pricing model to your clients, the longer a project drags on, the more that client amnesia sets in. And their objectivity to cost will wane with that time. Now, going from bad to worse, we have the last version, which is otherwise known as GMP, or Guaranteed Maximum Price. Use this model, you won't be in business much longer. This model puts a top ceiling cost on the project. Go over that amount and you're eating the cost. But the big problem is that it's priced as a cost plus project, meaning it's a lower markup compared to what you'd price a fixed cost project on. Meaning, it's a race to bankruptcy. While clients love the security of a top-end cap, it won't work for you in the long run. Remember, it's a trade-off between a high markup in fixed cost and a lower markup in cost plus. But in cost plus, you're guaranteed to always be compensated for the labor, materials, and trades, even if the costs are more than what you had originally estimated. The GMP model also doesn't align with the spirit of an actual cost plus contract. So now that we've covered the big 3 types of construction contracts and the 3 variations of cost plus, here's what I recommend. If you're considering transitioning to cost plus, you should only use true cost plus and ignore the other 2 variations. This ensures that you're protected from variances in the project which are virtually impossible to predict prior to starting. And it balances the risk between homeowners and yourselves, allowing for the most flexibility in the project. If you're curious about learning how to transition to cost plus, or say you're already doing cost plus but you want guidance on how to run this better, So make sure to sign up in the link in the description for our Cost Plus Masterclass. We're going to teach everything from A to Z of what it means to be a successful Cost Plus remodeler or custom home builder. All right, guys, that's it for this intro to the top 3 contracts and the variations on Cost Plus contracts and why you should only use true Cost Plus. If you like videos about Cost Plus construction, make sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments if there's other questions that you have about Cost Plus or anything else in residential construction. Thanks for watching. See you next time.